September 13th on the Arch Advocate podcast. Welcome back to the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for telling a friend. Thank you so much for hitting that subscribe button on your iTunes, on your SoundCloud, on your Spotify, whatever it is that you're listening in on. Please hit subscribe. That's the big one. Anyways, September 13th. It's a big one for me. This one in particular, on September 13th, 20 years ago, my little brother was murdered. And I don't say that to try to bring anybody down or, try to make people feel sympathy for me. I mean, it's been 20 years, all right? So emotionally, I'm almost all the way through it, all right? There's some residual in there, but there's a bigger point I want to get to, so please hang out long enough to get to the other end of this podcast, because I'm going to tie it all in together, all right? So this is going to get a little graphic. So what happened was on September 13th, 1998, which I believe was a Saturday, my little brother was hanging out at a friend's house whose mom had gone out of town, and his mom said that my little brother could stay over. My little brother's name was David Dobson. My son, who is about to be born in about a month and a half here, his name will be Ryland. His first name will be Ryland, and so I will be naming him after my brother. But anyways, he was over house sitting with a friend, and they were both just out of high school, so he was 19 years old. They were house sitting in a very suburban neighborhood, in a not like a condominium complex, but like a townhouse complex. It was just duplex, all the way through. Very nice neighborhood, very very Norman Rockwell type of neighborhood, a place called Allied Gardens in San Diego. And they decided to have a house party. A bunch of kids came over, some drinking and some carousing with the ladies and that sort of thing. And my little brother was outside. It was later into the night. And my brother was outside sitting on this little grassy hill with this girl. He's probably schmoozing with her. And some kid from about 45 minutes away, a place called Paradise Hills in San Diego, which is a very Asian part of San Diego. This kid, who was from his family lineage, was from Laos, right, Southeast Asia. This kid had pulled up into this neighborhood to drop off his girlfriend who lived in that neighborhood. And when he had dropped this girl off, and then he was driving away, and some kid at the party thought that he had recognized the guy in the car, or he thought he'd recognized the car, right? So he threw up his hands like, "Hey, what's up?" And evidently, the kid that was driving the car, the kid from Laos, was such an animal, was such a subhuman piece of garbage, that he interpreted what was happening as a challenge to fight to the death. As in, instead of saying, "Hey, what's up?" he thought it was like, "What's up? Let's kill each other." So instead of being a man, getting out of the car and resolving the issue with the strength of his own fists and the strength of his own will, he decided to drive for 45 minutes back to Paradise Hills and get 16 of his friends, or 15 of his friends. It was 16 in total. And they all got in cars and drove 45 minutes back to the party, at that point, my little brother was outside. And everybody that, the party was now 2 hours later, right? 2 or 3 hours later. And when they got there, most of the kids had gone home, or they had moved, back into the little townhouse there. And it was just my little brother outside with this girl sitting on the knoll. So these kids get out of the car, like these 16 of them. I say kids, they were teenagers and people in their early 20s. And they just decided to go up to my brother and challenge him to a fight. Now, my little brother was the kind of guy that would fight you if you asked him to. So he gets in a fight with these kids, and all 16 of them ganged up on him, beat him down to the ground, stabbed him in the skull, in his brain, with a screwdriver, and then shot him 6 times. Right? And they got back in their cars and drove back to whatever hellhole they were from. So the thing is, you know, people from all around the world have different sociological norms, right? Now, we've been very privileged in the West. We've been privileged with a great deal of scientific discoveries, with things like nutrition, you know, having a balanced diet, the importance of prenatal vitamins when you're pregnant, right? The importance of keeping your infants well fed with breast milk and supplementary vitamins so that those formative years, you know, your brain can form. We have figured that out in the Western world, but there are a lot of places in the world who have not yet figured that out. And there's a lot of places in the world where when babies are born, they don't have proper nutrition as their brains are just forming, right? And because of that, they will live out their entire lives with a dysfunctional brain because they were not given proper nutrition, proper instruction, sociological norms, things like education and Christianity and the idea of a social contract and the idea of a policy of non-aggression, that sort of thing. Like the idea that you teach your kids, like, hey, if you want something, you work your ass off for it. You don't go kill somebody else for it, right? And if somebody insults you or slights you or whatever, that is not in and of itself a reason to terminate the life of somebody else. These things may sound very simple to you as I explain them, but believe me when I tell you that there is a great deal, a large portion, an overwhelming majority of people who are born into this planet, who are born into such poverty and horrible circumstances that those basic concepts that I just explained to you are completely foreign to them. Right? They're foreign. They are unbelievable, as in, not unbelievable as in amazing, but unbelievable as in they will not believe you if you tell them. Right? Another example, when I myself was 18, 19 years old, we were gearing up and getting ready to go to Somalia when my battalion, we would have, on top of all of the training that we were doing, going out into the desert and practicing blowing stuff up and calling in F-18s to drop 2,000 pounders all around us, which was amazing. But there was also a lot of other preparation involved too, like educating us on what to expect once we got there. One thing that's very common in war is warriors having sex with the lady folk of the people that you're trying to liberate, right? There was a lot of half French babies after World War II, right? Because the Marines and soldiers came through, and then there was just a whole bunch of French women whose panties were dropping on the street, and it was like, okay, I'm taking you home with me, sweet little French lady, and then boom, whole bunch of half French babies being born. Those people are now your parents and my parents. One of the things that they were preparing us for is they were saying, listen, it's very common to, it's very understandable to, want to have sex with some of these women that we're going to, but you can't this time. We're not going to liberate France. We're going to Somalia. And Somalia is literally the AIDS capital of the world, or at least it was back then. But it was the AIDS capital of the world and the disease capital of the world, like, not just AIDS, but a whole bunch of other diseases. They were telling us, like, listen, we have tried to explain to these people that, like, when you get AIDS, you cannot go out and rape a baby because that actually does not cure AIDS. And those people, those Somalians, they would just look at the doctors and look at the people from the United States and from the United Kingdom and, you know, the people from the United Nations and whatever. They would look at those people and be like, ah, that's just white man voodoo. We have our own voodoo that we like. That's just a bunch of horse shit, right? We would try to explain to them like, no. Like, you know how you've seen planes flying through the air? Well, that's because we figured stuff out. Like, we figured out how to do that. That's not magic. That's actually, like, there's a process. It's called science and the scientific method. Yeah, I can't really explain it to you, but just trust me. When you find out that you have AIDS, don't rape a baby. And they, to this day, they still don't understand that. They don't understand, like, you have to wash your hands before you eat. Because there's these little tiny creatures, we call them germs, and they're everywhere. And, you know, they live on your hands, and when you eat food with your hands, those germs get in your mouth. Some of them are good, some of them can kill you. So you need to wash your hands before you eat. Oh, that's just white man's voodoo. You know what I mean? Like, there are people on this planet, they're not, you know, they're not with us. It's unfortunate. In fact, it's horrific. It's absolutely horrific. I understand why it is that the people of Laos are violent to a subhuman level, right? This is something that I have struggled with now for exactly to the day 20 years. Because what happened that day caused me to ask a very profound question. And that question was why? Now that question, why, it's kind of a mixed bag. When you question why, you can do it in one of two tones, right? You can question, you can say the word why as a statement, like shake your fist at the heavens, why? Right? Which I certainly went through that phase for many years. But eventually it ended up turning into an actual question of why. Why did these people do this? Why was it in their mind? How is it that they came to the conclusion that this was the correct course of action? Right? There's 15 kids sitting around doing whatever Laotian people do, and one of their buddies shows up and says, "Hey, everybody, come with me. We're gonna go kill somebody because he insulted me." And evidently, a whole group of them unanimously just said, okay, let's all get up and let's go. Like, how was it so socially acceptable for these people to do that? Right? Well, you start looking into certain things, like, you know, what Southeast Asia has been like for the last 100 years. You know what I mean? You start looking at the condition of those people, and you start finding out things like, you know, the effect that the war in Vietnam had, and the effect that communism had, and the effect that people like Pol Pot had on that region. And not just Laos, but Vietnam and Cambodia and whatever. It's like, man, these people, they have not come to the place where they've decided to join the rest of the world and advance themselves and be a part of the progression of mankind. They've decided to stay in their weird little stupid world. And that's where I'm at right now, you know, 20 years into it, is like, well, you know, there's evil, right? There's evil people, certainly. But there's something that is much worse than evil, according to Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And what's worse than evil is stupid. And not stupid as a pejorative either. Like, calling somebody stupid, it's like, oh, you're stupid. Well, that's name calling. But that word stupid, it actually has a meaning. It's a word. It's a word in the English language, and it has a meaning. And some people are stupid. They're stupid. They're not smart. They have low IQs. They have dysfunctional brains. Right? And stupid people tend to be the most violent because there is that lack of evil. You know what I mean? Evil people have an objective. Evil people have an end game. That's why evil is defeatable. You can defeat evil with good, and it always happens. Eventually. Eventually it always happens. You know what I mean? Socialists always shoot themselves in the foot because socialism is evil. Evil has an agenda, and therefore you can defeat it. And the reason you can defeat it is because if you know what the agenda is, like, you can make plans. You can predict what your enemy is going to do because you know where they're going. You know what their destination is. And therefore you can make plans. It's like, well, I know if he's going to try to, be on the top of that mountain, I need to get onto the top of that mountain before he gets there, and then I can defeat him. You know what I mean? Stupid, on the other hand, is unfortunately you can't plan for it. You don't know what stupid people are going to do because they don't know. Right? You don't know what stupid people are going to do because they don't know what they're going to do because they're stupid. That's what Dietrich Bonhoeffer was saying when he said, listen, there's evil and then there's stupid. And, the reason Adolf Hitler was able to do what he accomplished was because people are stupid. You know what I mean? Adolf Hitler was just one guy, but he convinced a whole lot of stupid people to do some pretty horrible things. See what I'm saying? And why did I say all that? Well, it's, on this show, when I talk about watching the world go crazy and trying to help people understand, listen, you're not alone, all right? This very confusing time that we're in right now, these very bizarre things that we're seeing on a regular basis, you're not alone in that feeling. You know what I mean? When you look around, you see what people are doing, and you're like, I just don't even know. This is just so bizarre. I don't even know what to think. It's just so weird. Why would that person do that? You just heard about that college professor. A professor. So not just an educated man, an educator of the educated people. Right? The head, the head class of academia. The college professor just shot himself in the arm with a 22 pistol as a means of protesting the President of the United States. I don't know what to do with that information. I don't know what, you know what I mean? Wait a minute, you're a college professor and you shot yourself in the arm with a firearm to tell America that you don't like the President of the United States. I don't know where I'm at anymore. I don't know what to do with that information. You know what I mean? We can all look at that and point fingers and laugh, but it's there's that too, and certainly I do that. But then there's the side where you finally sit down and you think about what happened. Why did this person do this? How is it that person has been in charge of educating and shaping the minds of young people for however long? How is this happening? You know what I mean? Why? Why is this happening? Not why in the sense that you shake your fist at the sky and yell at God, but you finally come to that calm place where you're like, okay, why? Why is this happening? Why is this happening? And then you start reverse engineering the question. Why is this happening? You know what I mean? Is it possible that the fact that, we've had a very high divorce rate for the last 60 years of American history, could that possibly be a factor, since that is definitely a new development in the story of mankind? Is it possible that the fact that, over half of, U.S. Americans and the Iraq, over half of Americans are bombed out of their gourd on pharmaceutical medications? Is that possible? Is it possible that that's a factor? Because that's never been a factor before. There has never been a point in history, in all of recorded history. You know what I mean? Think about that. However long you believe history is. Some people believe it's 7,000 years. Some people think it's 300 million years. Either way, right? Whoever you are, whatever all of recorded history is to you, or all of history, period, is to you, there has never been a point in history where the divorce rate was where it is, and the majority of the population was walking around on drugs. That's never happened before. Whoever you are, however long you believe history it is, it's never been this way before, right? Not right up until the last, let's see, I'm 45 years old, so, this all happened in my lifetime. Well, I mean, the divorce thing goes a little bit further back, but this has never happened before, right? For the last 1,700 years, Christianity has been deeply embraced by the Western world, but in the last, 45 to 60 years, we have departed from that. Could that possibly be a factor? You have to reverse engineer it, right? You have to ask the question, not in an accusatory, is that even a word? Not as an accusation, but as an actual question. Why? Why is this happening? Why did those people kill my brother? How is it that they all came to a consensus simultaneously that was the thing to do? Right? Now, to go even a little bit further, this is something I wanted to talk about as well. I was reading an article that somebody wrote just a couple of days ago. And whoever wrote this article, he himself is a writer. And I believe he writes blogs for news organizations. So he's he's at least a freelance writer, but definitely a professional. Like the way that he pays his bills is he writes stuff down and submits it to people. All right. He wrote this story of something that had happened to him just recently, and it really rang a bell with me because a very similar, almost identical thing happened to me. So I'm going to tell his story first, and then I'm going to tell you what happened to me. So he's out to dinner with some friends, and their friends, he's a writer, so he's a creative type, and therefore himself and most of the people he knows are going to be sort of left-leaning people. And that's typical of creative type of people, right? I'm a creative type of person, and a lot of the people I know, or even or even that I would call friends, they're left leaning at least. I've lost a lot of the people that were like the furthest left leaning. Most of those people aren't my friends anymore because they leaned so far left that they fell over. You know what I mean? But he was out to dinner. And evidently there was a sort of a large amount of people. From the article, it sounded like there was, somewhere around 10 or maybe even 20 people there. And the topic that was being talked about at the table, and oh, by the way, they're all English, right? They're all in the UK or Ireland. I can't remember. But there's a bunch of people sitting around, and some of the people were talking about the migrant crisis that's going on in the UK. There's all these African migrants coming into England and committing vicious, horrible crimes. And as soon as they touch foot, on the cliffs of Dover, they immediately sign up for welfare. So these are all people who aren't working and they're just soaking off of the system. But these people, right, they're leftists, so they're like, oh, we need to help these people. And this guy just very matter-of-factly says, well, I think the fact that these people are coming over and going immediately on welfare and then they're not even looking for work is that's definitely hurting their image when it comes to this topic. And instead of the person like firing back with a response, like a well thought out, calculated argument, one or maybe even a couple of people that were sitting at the table burst into tears. They started crying, right? Because of this horrible man making very, very inarguable observations. Just starts crying. Oh, it's people like you that are killing this planet. You're the reason why we can't all just live in peace and love. You know what I mean? Just starts crying. And I really, like, he was writing about that, and he was just like, man, we're effing doomed. If this is how people discuss things, you know what I mean? You're going to start crying. Am I supposed to feel bad now? Am I supposed to change my mind because you're so weak that what I said made you start crying? Oh, here, let me change my worldview so that I can just get you to stop crying over dinner. You know what I mean? Like, you're a weakling. I don't feel bad for you. The fact that you're crying tells me that if you were alive 100 years ago, you would have been eaten by wolves. You are weak. You are the weak amongst the herd. And your ass is going to get ate up by the very people that you think you're helping. Right? Weaklings. Stupid people. And I really, like, that article I read, it really resonated with me because just over 2 years ago, I went to Calais, France. I went to the refugee camp there called The Jungle. I made a short little documentary about it. If you want to see it, send me an email. You can go to archadvocate.com, arch-advocate.com. Send me an email, and I will send you the video. But I was in Calais. I was inspecting because I had heard that there was all these injustices going on, and I wanted to go find out. Oh my God, there's all these refugees, and the Western world is not owning up to international law as it applies to people who are on refugee status. Like, that's a pretty sacred thing. We have international law to cover that. And it goes like this. If you are a refugee, right? If you had to flee your country because there's a war going on in your country, then you have the right to go to a different country. And if you can show up, if it's in the Western world, if it's in Europe, the United States, well, not really Australia because you can't walk to Australia, but the rule is if that's the case, then we will take care of you until the conflict is over. That's international law. So I was obviously very bothered by the news that I was hearing that there were all these Syrian refugees who were doctors and engineers fleeing for their lives. And I was thinking to myself, oh, this will not do. I must go tell these people's story. Because obviously if this is happening, then clearly the only way that this could be happening is if people don't know. So I went. I took this GoPro that you're watching on, if you're watching on YouTube, this thing that I'm recording on right now, that's what I took. I took this, I took some other recording equipment, and I went there. Guess what I found? I found not refugees. I found not Syrians. I found not women and children. I found not doctors and engineers. I found 10,000 Africans, men and militant, right? That's what I found. And for my trouble, right? Some guy tried to pickpocket me. This one African dude tried to pickpocket me. Like, I was there volunteering, helping that camp, helping these people. They tried to rob me. I almost got in a fight. Like, a lot of people died when I was there because there was infighting going on inside the camp. Tribes attacking other tribes. It was a complete like, well, one, it was a complete, cluster F. But two, it was like, dude, somebody's been lying to the Western world. They keep saying that these are refugees, man. They're from Syria, and we've been bombing Syria. We have to help these refugees. And I was like, okay. So I went and looked. Lo and behold, oh, there's no refugees, but you keep these people that were working there. We're continually going out on Twitter and going out on Facebook and telling these people, like, please send money to help these Syrian refugees, and if you don't, then you're a heartless bastard. And I was telling these people, like, look, man, it's not just me. There's going to be more people like me. And when the world finds out that you've been lying to them, you're going to do way more damage than I think you understand. Anyways, what had happened was there was a pub called Family Pub. It's right there in Calais, if should you ever show up in Calais. By the way, there's a Thomas Jefferson Memorial in Calais, but different topic. I was at a pub called the Family Pub, and that's usually every night. That's where the volunteers would go, to have a pint and smoke a cigarette and eat a margarita pizza. I was sitting there and I was talking with the couple of people, and somebody had asked me, like, what I thought so far, and I said, well, I really appreciate the fact that there's so many people here volunteering their time. Because even if it's misguided, compassion is a miraculous thing. And I said these words, I said, I think that compassion, the expression of compassion is one of the highest forms of prayer. Right? Very, very simple words, really. Well, not simple, but, maybe too flowery and poetic, but it's certainly not controversial words, Well, I think that compassion, expressing compassion for any reason is one of the highest forms of prayer. That's all I said. And immediately this girl who was, there was a couple of Americans there. This girl was from like Minnesota or Michigan or someplace, and she had just graduated college. So I said, higher form of prayer. And she immediately comes back and she goes, I don't think that you should use that word. I said, what? Well, I think that, prayer, that makes me uncomfortable. And, I don't think that you should use that word. And I just looked at her and I said, Miss, because what was that, 2 years ago? So I was 43. I said, Miss, I'm 43 years old, and this is my life, and I will say whatever words I want. Do you understand me? I will say whatever I want. And she didn't, that was all I said. And I kept looking at her, because I was looking at her eyes like, I can't believe what you just suggested that I not use. Actually, she didn't even suggest it. Was like, you just told me to not use words. Who the F do you think you are? So I kept staring at her, and she shut her mouth, and she had this puzzled look on her face. She literally did not know what to do with that situation. And I was baffled at the fact that she didn't know what to do with that situation. And I started thinking to myself, how did you come to this what kind of life have you lived up until this moment where you would think that you could say something like that to somebody else and have it have an effect? She was expecting me to change my behavior, and that was blowing my mind. What? How are you a person? How are you still alive and not have been torn to pieces by wolves or bears? How have you lived this long? Stupid. You know what I mean? How you just graduated college. Do you mean to tell me that they taught you this in school? That it's okay to just tell somebody oh, that word makes me feel uncomfortable, man. I don't care what makes you feel uncomfortable. I'll say whatever I want to say. And I really identified with that guy that wrote that article. I was like, dude, I know exactly what you're talking about, sir. Because just like him, like I was puzzled. I was more puzzled than I was offended. I was slightly offended, but I was horrifically puzzled. Like, what? Well, can you repeat that? Because there's no way that I heard you correctly. You know what I mean? How dare you? How dare you say something like that out loud? I will say whatever the F I want. I will say whatever I want. If I believe that the earth is flat, I will say the earth is flat, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it. Right? Now, I think that, I've made this observation before. I think Holocaust deniers are like the worst people, as far as conspiracy theorists goes. Armenian, Holocaust or the Jewish Holocaust, like, I think that Holocaust deniers are like, in the conspiracy theory world, those are the worst people. But if I want to say that the Holocaust was a hoax, I will say that. I'll say whatever I want to say because I'm a grown-ass man and I am sovereign over my own life. I will say whatever the F I want to say. How dare you? You know what I mean? But not how dare you in a shaking my fist, but like, how dare you? How did you dare just now to say that? How are you, you know what I mean? Like, what's wrong? What's broken in your brain that allowed this to happen? And is there a remedy? Is there a cure? Is there a pill or a shot or some sort of physical therapy? I don't know, but I just, you know what I mean? And so there is this sociological shift, and I have no idea what the actual numbers are. If you look on social media or TV or pictures that have been taken, it appears that there are a great many people out there that are like the crying ladies and the lady that I talked to, and the kind of people that are like Antifa people. It looks like they have large numbers, but the more I observe it, the more I see, no, it's actually what we're seeing is all of them, right? When you watch like the Portland videos, it's like, it looks like it's the majority of people, but it's not. It's just they all showed up. And so if there's 2,000 of them, it's like, it looks like that truly represents the city of Portland, or truly represents London, England, or Paris, France, or whatever. It's like, no, it just looks that way because they're all there. You know what I mean? And I like to believe that there are more people that are still using reason and logic, right? And they're looking around going like, listen, there are people that are trying to come into our country that they are never going to assimilate to our way of life. These people have no problem murdering other people, and it's not because they're evil. It's because they're stupid. They are subhuman. You know what I mean? If they were evil, we could defeat them. But that's the problem, is that they're not evil. They're stupid. They were malnourished from the point of their birth. They were born into horrific circumstances. Now listen, I'm not trying to make light of that. The fact is that, like, look, if I was born in Somalia instead of San Diego, I would be a very different person. I would have a completely different experience. I'm not trying to take away from the fact that there is some horrific things that are going on this planet that need to be fixed. But I'm also saying at the same time, the answer is not, let's import these people who murder people without even thinking, who throw acid in the face of 3-year-old children, who go on machete-wielding attacks because they believe that their God will approve of them if they do that. People who shoot themselves in the arm because they want to tell the whole world that they're mad about who the president is. Right? Who think it's okay to just keep eating cake, and society comes along and says, here, be on the cover of Cosmopolitan magazine. right? Or people who think that when they catch AIDS, that what they need to go do is rape a baby. That's what is happening. By the way, people, you may think that I'm being over the top when I'm saying that. Let me assure you that today, right, if you're listening to this podcast, or if you're watching it on YouTube, as I am speaking, there is a rape in progress of a baby in Somalia. It's going to happen today. If it has not happened already, or if it is not happening at this very moment when you hear these words, that is going to happen. And the motive for that crime is going to be because that man has AIDS, and it is the extent of his scientific knowledge is that if he rapes that baby, he will no longer have AIDS. That's going to happen. It's tragic on every level. But the cure for that problem is not taking that guy and saying, please, come to America. Have some free money. Come walk amongst our children. That's not the answer. What is the answer? I have no idea. I have no idea, because whatever idea that you have, it's been tried. You know what I mean? Whatever idea you have, it's been tried. I'll tell you what else isn't the answer. Sitting around bitching about how evil colonizers are. The fact that there's any black people alive in Africa still is because we colonized them. And we rescued them from themselves. Those people were cannibalizing one another, committing wars on one another. Africa 200 years ago and beyond was horrific. How do I know that? Because it's still horrific. And the only reason there's anybody even left is because they were colonized. And the Christian people came down and said, listen, you assholes, stop eating one another. That's gross. And it's deadly for you. You'll get the human equivalent of mad cow disease. So there's an element of people out there that are stupid, and they will kill you, and they won't even think about it. And that's truly that's the thing that you have to be aware of, is it's not the evil people. Right? If you want to defeat evil, just go find it and start working on it. It'll be actually pretty simple. Right? Because evil is predictable. Evil has an agenda. Evil has a goal in mind. Like George Soros, he's evil. If you want to defeat him, just look at what he's trying to accomplish and then cut him off at the pass. Simple. Stupid, on the other hand. Stupid is who people like George Soros are trying to employ. When they talk about open borders, they're not trying to be benevolent to the people of South America. They're trying to bring in people that are so stupid that they will kill at will. And they want that to destabilize this planet. Because they want all the goodness driven out. Because they're satanic. That's why they're bringing in all the stupid people. And you better be smart, man, because, I don't know if you guys saw this, but 3 or 4 days ago, there was that footage of militants, men carrying weapons and wearing camouflage, crossing our borders. It's coming very soon, people. Very soon. Right? And you're going to have to be prepared for what's coming, because it's a hell of a thing to stand in judgment of another human being's life. It's a hell of a thing. And you better be reasonable and even-tempered, and you better be a man of prayer. You know what I mean? Because we are very, very close to being put into a situation where you're going to have to fight. And your enemy's most likely not going to be evil and coordinated and calculated. They're just going to be stupid. And that makes for a very very unpredictable battle strategy. Anyways, there's evil people out there, people, and there's stupid people out there. There's people whose expression of evil is compassion, right? Everything, I've made this observation before, everything that's good in life has an evil side, right? There's an opposite of love. There is an opposite of kindness. There is an opposite of charity. There's an opposite to everything, and there is an opposite to compassion, right? And it's bleeding heart, right? When you're compassionate, you want to get in and try to fix the problem in somebody else's or some other things, like if you see a wounded animal, compassion makes you want to fix that animal. If you see a broken human, compassion drives you to get in there and try to help that human repair itself. And when it's you doing it, that's compassion. But the flip side of that is a bleeding heart. And that's where you want to compel other people to do the work. That's what we're seeing. These young people in Europe, which is very, very nearly dead, in the United Kingdom and the United States, these young people that claim to be the personification of love and justice and whatever, you will never find them doing the work themselves. You will always find them chanting that the government comes in and makes somebody else do the work. That's evil. And it's a force to be reckoned with, But anyways, I hope that all tied into what I was saying. It's like, look, there's bad stuff that happens. There's bad people out there. There's evil people and there's stupid people. And you do need to ask why, but you need to make sure that when you ask why, that it is in fact a question, that you're actually seeking some sort of an answer. Right? Because all those years I spent asking why with my fist clenched and shaking at the sky, I wasn't actually asking a question. And because of that, I never got an answer. I just stewed in my own anger and my own hurt. And I never got an answer. And it wasn't until I slowed down and said, oh, okay. Why did this happen? Why? Who were these people? Why did this happen? Then I started getting answers, a lot of them. Most of which did not offer any sort of comfort other than the fact that I got an answer, which is somewhat comforting, but more times than not, it just made me more angry. But at least I had an answer, That's what, that's one of the things that it's going to take to get us through these days. And again, we're going to have to do it together. So come on, join me on Twitter. Join me on Telegram, join me on Facebook, write me an email, stay in contact, get on the email list. And you can do that by going to arch-advocate.com, archadvocate.com. If you want to send a couple of bucks my way to keep the show going, you can do that on PayPal. That's right there on the website. Or if you want to become a monthly sponsor or donor or patron, you can do that on Patreon. Couple of bucks a month, whatever it is that floats your boat, man. It all helps. Every ounce counts. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for sharing this day with me. 20th anniversary of the death of my favorite person on the planet, David Dobson. Rest in peace, little brother. We'll talk to you tomorrow.